RPGs have changed a lot since the 1990s. That may seem like an obvious statement, but with the staggeringly disappointing release of Fallout 76 so very fresh in our minds, those of us who lived through the golden age of CRPGs have much to be nostalgic for. We have seen what was once a genre which unapologetically told nerdy stories to a proudly niche audience with small text and big ideas, lots of reading and math, change itself, molding itself into a more market-friendly product. Now the things that made RPGs from the 90s and early 2000s great are buzzwords, cynically inserted into games that have no right to call themselves RPGs, into action games with RPG elements. This itself is a concept that I want to dive into more at a future date, but it's fair to say that those of us who have seen the rise of the CRPG might also consider this time period to be a twilight. I, for one, see hope that there will not be a long, dark night for RPGs anytime soon, because as I shoved my copy of Fallout 76 into the deep recesses of my recycle bin, staring nostalgically towards the front covers of Fallouts 1 and 2, saying to myself, why don't they make them like that anymore? From the east comes light, shining forth. I don't know why or even how, but Eastern Europe seems to be putting out the best RPGs on the market, from Kingdom Come last year to the Witcher series, Stalker, and now, from an international team of Poles, Russians, Ukrainians, and Latvians, Atom RPG. Yes, the name could use some work. Despite sounding like a game developed from exclusively free Unity assets, Atom is a gem among indie games. A frequent question among Fallout fans is, what would the nuclear apocalypse have looked like from the Russian perspective? And Atom answers, although with its own voice. While obviously very intentionally inspired from Fallout 1 and 2, Atom is a somewhat more lucid trip into an irradiated wasteland, at least at first. While there are the odd giant talking rat, mouse kingdoms, super mutated burrowing bug colonies, shape-shifting forest witch demons, and sentient mushroom cults, these are not your everyday encounters. You're not running into double-headed cows, super mutants, or centuries-old talking trees on the regular. The most fantastical elements in Atom, at least for your first 15 hours of the game, are fantastic due to their rarity. This is partially because of the setting. In Fallout, you were exploring the ruins of a society culturally locked in time from the 1950s, at the height of communist paranoia, which either had a resurgence or never really went away until the bombs fell 150 years later. Fallout is actually a rather interestingly divergent universe, where the United States split up in the 60s into a federated commonwealth, and by 2050 had entered a nuclear-powered golden age, which hid the rumblings of the resource wars, which would consume the following 2 decades, culminating in the nuclear apocalypse. Atom, by contrast, takes place in a world far more similar to our own, where, during the height of the Cold War in the 1980s, the fall of the Berlin Wall triggered a worldwide nuclear exchange. Now, 19 years later, in the far future date of 2005, society is still trying to pull itself together. Similarly to Fallout, you are the chosen agent of an underground society that would really rather remain hidden, who has been tasked with solving the mysterious disappearance of a resource-gathering expedition. Of course, it never stays that simple, and murderous conspiracies, underground cults, and revolutionary rumblings will become commonplace in your adventures through a cassette tape-strewn wasteland. Rather than replicating the modern approach with full voiceovers, the text-based, elegant, if wordy, dialogue system is on point in telling this increasingly deep storyline, with a number of chances in every encounter to use some skill or trait of your characters to influence the conversation. Your dialogue options will be different if you're smart or stupid, slovenly or charismatic. Some things are actually only available to you if you're under a certain ability level, like superstitious charms that only work if you're under average intelligence. Divergent dialogue like that is rare enough in today's market, but in Atom you can totally swing quests one way or another by using guile. You can even fail before you begin by Pissing off people essential to your quest. Insulting every tiny-dicked wasteland lowlife's whore mother can actually get them to dislike you enough to the point that they'll just stop interacting with you or attack you outright. It seems that at the very least, the main quest storyline is robust enough so that, while finessing them can lead to unexpected rewards, there's always a lowest common denominator to solve each mystery, even if it's not pretty. Killing everyone in the room is always an option, even with characters who might seem essential to the plot, and with Adam's handily familiar combat system, you'll be doing it in style. Adam's combat system has much to be praised for. Weapon classes make a big difference in how combat flows. You'll want to kill the shotgun-toting militia before they can close in range. Your snipers will want to target their snipers. And you for sure want to focus fire on the literal tinfoil hat-wearing insane wasteland cults who just strap bombs in their chests and run at you screaming. The combat is on the whole gleefully tactical and intensely satisfying, looting the bodies of the foul denizens of the irradiated tundra even more so, knowing that each battle brings you closer to that shiny new Makarov or Kalashnikov you've had your eye on. One of the cooler parts of Adam's combat system is that it is faithfully recreating Fallout and games like it, but with that comes a catch. There are a few troublesome blind spots to the combat that I should touch on. Many of them are, I think, present because Adam is trying to emulate an older combat system. First and foremost, if you didn't rein them in, the AI could be total knuckleheads. They would consistently plant themselves directly behind you and drill the back of your head with fully automatic Warsaw Pact munitions for turn after turn. I didn't even try to give them grenades for the fear of really turning each and every combat encounter into a redneck landshark fishing expedition. Now, the guys on the Adam team have been very quick to address this issue, and there are a whole host of AI changes in the 1.08 patch, which came earlier this month. Along with being able to give them rudimentary direct commands like go here, target these guys, don't engage until I say, you can now alter their AI to make better decisions for themselves. With a mostly hands-off interface, now greatly improved, the combat encounters are much more streamlined, and you don't have to go through the time-consuming, ultimately exhausting process of planning everyone's moves out every single turn. If, on the off chance, you need to give specific commands, you're still empowered to do so. The AI will always have a chance to do something stupid, in some cases boning that entire encounter, but that's what the load button was made for, right? Speaking of the load button, one aspect of older RPG combat mechanics is permanent death for NPCs in your party. Even in the nostalgic past, I was not a fan of these, because losing any single party member in combat would necessitate a load, even in games like Baldur's Gate, where death could be circumvented by a lengthy and expensive trip to your local church. The cost and time delay were nowhere near worth playing the game more realistically, and that's not to mention the titles with real permadeath. What this effectively meant was that every combat encounter has to be perfect, 0 losses, every time. I don't feel like this makes you better at the combat. I find that this makes you load a lot more often, and it becomes tedious, especially when you're fighting the aforementioned suicide bomber cult dudes, who are way more deadly than even enemies far above their level due to the timing required to kill them and then get everyone away from the bodies before the turn they explode. My third point is that I think that there are some niches that the combat does not exploit fully enough. Conventional wisdom counterindicates bringing a knife to a gunfight, and Adam holds this true for the most part. Even with the changes in .08, late-game melee builds don't seem as effective as, a burst of PKM fire close range. You still have to put a whole lot of time and points into making a melee build work, when a jack-of-all-trades rifleman might be more useful in more circumstances. As they exist now, melee weapons act primarily as debuffs, decreasing dodge chance on successful hits and causing far more knockdown chance than most other weapons. The better and more linear perks in 1.08 make melee more useful than before, but still, later game machine guns and high-power sniper rifles give you enough damage to make the chance to stun and the little bit extra damage in melee too little and too late. I'm sure you guys with your rosters of armor-penetrating, leg-sweeping ninjas can prove me wrong in the comments section. This is also an RPG. You can play however you want, and if an empty-handed wasteland monk is your cup of tea, then by all means, take the road less traveled. A more difficult run is not necessarily a worse one, and heavens knows how much I've tried to make my silver-tongued devil diplomatic character avoid most conflict with a wave of his hand, when the odd pack of drug-addled madmen just won't take "I don't want to kill you" for an answer. Just warning that those of you who might want to play it a certain way, that you might run into obstacles finding your chosen path, particularly since some things, such as the total lack of a need to spec into lockpicking, as you can get a companion character to do it for you, are not explained in the outset. Expect at least 1 or 2 or 3 re-rolled characters around an hour or 2 in, after you find that maybe you put all your eggs into the exact basket that you don't need and probably will never need for the rest of the game. Those small mechanical nitpicks aside, Adam really is a fantastic title. It shows that a few dudes working for like 7 years in their spare time to essentially replicate a 20-year-old game can result in an absolutely excellent experience. It also says something very interesting about the gaming market today, that you can take what is essentially a copy of a 2 decades old game and it reads like something totally new and different. The gaming market has changed that much that Adam feels like a breath of fresh air, even though it's essentially antiquated on purpose. Did we really reach a golden age of RPG in the 90s? Have we devolved from them? I guess that's up to your personal tastes. I think we have traded mechanical and narrative complexity for immersion and ease of approach for the most part, and barring some exceptions. The indie market has certainly been ripe for good old-school games in every old-school genre, and Adam was one of these. I haven't finished Adam's main storyline, and I will say that after 120 hours or so of wandering the wastes, yeah, there are some problems, a few bugs, a few mechanical issues, but far and away, call me a softie for independent CRPGs or a nostalgic old man pining for the past, but I loved every minute of Adam RPG, and the best thing I can say to you is, get off my lawn, stop playing your music so goddamn loud, and go get a copy of a real game, Adam RPG, before it's too late for you.